So as we go through the middle of the 4th chapter of Yevamot, we're circling around the question of brothers and sisters. And we learned actually that you can't marry, if you're a man, you can't marry the sister of your divorcee. You can't marry this, you can't divorce your wife and marry her sister. And a woman who performs chalitza is essentially in the same category as someone who's been divorced. So that's impossible. And the Mishnah is going to circle around now this question of brothers and sisters, and it's going to examine the question of someone who's waiting for chalitza but hasn't yet received it. Shomeret yavam, shekidesh achiv achota. Someone who's a shomeret yavam, someone whose husband had died and was waiting for yibum, and his brother betrothed her sister. Let's just have a look at the picture to make this clear. So Alice is married to Alex. Alex dies. Bob must be the eldest because Bob is going to carry out yibum for Alice, or chalitza for that matter. He can do yibum or chalitza, but he hasn't done anything yet. We're right after, when we must be right after Alex's death. We don't know whether Bob is married or not. We know nothing about Bob, except that he's waiting to carry out yibum or chalitza with Alice. And he has a brother called Charlie. And what does Charlie do? Charlie goes and betroths Alice's sister. Alice has a sister called Charlotte. So now Charlie is engaged to Charlotte. Bob is waiting for yibum with Alice. I guess if everything goes fine, Bob could do chalitza or yibum with Alice, and Charlie can go ahead and marry Charlotte, Alice's sister. But wait, what if something goes wrong? What if Bob dies? What if for some reason Bob's responsibility shifts to Charlie? Charlie will then be double involved with Alice and with Alice's sister Charlotte. And we know you can't have a marital relationship with two sisters. It doesn't work. So let's get back. Now that's the picture. Let's just review the Mishnah now. Shomer Yabam shekidesh achiv erachuta. So the brother of the Yabam betrothed the sister of the Shomeret Yavam, the woman who's waiting for Yibum. Mishem Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. This is not Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. This is a much earlier Rabbi Yehuda, and he's authoritative. Omrimlo, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, they say Omrimlo. So they say to him, they say this to Charlie, who's engaged this woman. Hamtain ad sheyaseh achicha gadol maaseh. Wait until your older brother will act. In other words, fine, you're betrothed to this woman, but you can't marry her until you can't marry her until we see what your elder brother has done with Alice. Chaltzu achem or kansu. If the brothers performed chalitza or married her, in other words, if Alice is taken care of one way or the other, yichnos et ishto. He can go ahead and marry Charlotte. There's no problem. Once the question of yibum is resolved, he can go ahead and marry Charlotte. But and similarly, meita hayavama yichnos. Maybe Alice will die, and it's unfortunate to say this, but if Alice dies, again, the whole question of yibum is resolved. He can go ahead and marry Charlotte. But meita hayavam. If Bob dies, the responsibility goes on to Charlie. Meit hayavam motzi et ishto vaget. If the yavam dies, he can't be connected to Alice's sister anymore. He's got this bond of betrothal. The only way of getting out of that is to give her a get. Motzi et ishto vaget. He has to give her a get. And then vet eisher chi b'chalitza, and he then has to perform chalitza with his brother's wife, because he's connected to two sisters. He can't carry out once he's divorced Charlotte with a get, he can't marry Charlotte's sister Alice. So both sisters become forbidden to him. So the only thing he can do is to give one of them a get and to perform chalitza with the other. And we can see it again in the picture on the source sheet. If Bob dies, Charlie can't possibly be connected to both of these women. So he has to give the first one a get. And then the second one, well, it becomes the sister of his divorced wife. And he can't marry the, so you can't marry the sister of your divorced wife. So he has to perform chalitza with her. What about the time lag? And we talked about that. Mishnah talks at the beginning of the chapter about the fact that if the Yevamot, if the widow of the deceased brother is found to be pregnant, it creates all kinds of uncertainty as to who the father of the child is. Because if the father of the child is her original husband, then the brother hasn't died childless. So there's no need for Yibum at all. But if she's carried out Yibum, perhaps the father is the new husband. Well, it's an indeterminate state. It's an indeterminate state. What does the Mishnah rule? So now in the 10th Mishnah, Hayevama lo tachlot velo tityabem ad sheyehula shalosh chodashim. The Yevamah should neither perform chalitza nor be taking in Yibum until 3 months have passed. I.e., okay, let's just do a cooling off period of 3 months. And the rabbis, by the way, don't really recognize early term pregnancies that are shorter than 7 months. I mean, it's probably not a fetus that was more than 3 months premature is probably not viable in the time of the Mishnah. But also, in terms of 3 months, a pregnancy is apparent at 3 months. So you can see both from the point of view of early term birth and from the point of view of the appearance of pregnancy. You can see why a 3-month interval would be sufficient. So we don't do anything, neither chalitza nor yibum, until 3 months have passed. But the Mishnah then goes on to talk about other kinds of marriage. And we've said before that the tractate of Yevamot is really outlining the boundaries of marriage, just as much as it's outlining the boundaries of Yibum, of levirate marriage. And so it goes on to say, V'chein are kol hanashim, and similarly all other women. And this is referring now, I think, to married women. So that the expression Isha or Nashim here, I've translated as women, but I think we're really referring to wives or married women anyway. V'chein she'ar kol hanashim, and similarly all other married women. Lo yinasu velo itarsu, should neither be betrothed nor married ad shiyula hen shlosha chodashim, until 3 months have passed. So we're now talking about women who were married but have left their husbands. And the Mishnah is saying, look, if you've left your husband, you shouldn't get betrothed or married again for a 3-month period. We have the same 3-month cooling off period. And again, you can see that the rabbis are incredibly anxious. They're incredibly anxious about cases where forbidden relationships are suspected. And they want to put all the distance that they can. They want to put away all possible doubt. So this 3-month interval is incredibly handy in terms of sending away doubt. So they go on to, the Mishnah goes on to say, Echad b'tulot ve'echad b'ulot. It doesn't matter whether they're virgins or not virgins. Could you be a virgin divorcee? Well, perhaps you could. Remember that after betrothal, in order to break up a betrothal, you require a get. You require a bit of divorce. So you could be, if you're betrothed but not married, you could be a virgin divorcee. Echad b'tulot ve'echad b'ulot. Whether they're virgins or not, ve'echad almanot, ve'echad grushot, same for widows, same for divorcees, ve'echad arusot, ve'echad nusuot. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about marriage or betrothal, we still require the 3-month interval. And according to Kahati, this is the halacha. According to Kahati, Rabbi Yudah said, Rabbi Yudah is going to bring a different view. Rabbi Yudah says, those that were married could be betrothed. So in other words, we don't need a 3-month gap before betrothal. And those who were betrothed may be married. So if they were just betrothed and divorced, they can get married without the 3-month interval. Chutz min ha'arusa shebiyudah. mipnei shelibu gaspa, with the exception of the betrothed woman, a betrothed woman in Judea. Somehow the halacha is different. The halacha is different for someone who's engaged in the area of Judah, in the area of Judea. Mipnei shelibu gaspa, because his heart was full. Gas is a very odd Hebrew expression. It means to be full, but not full in a positive way. Gas is to be proud, or to be haughty, or to be overly familiar, or to be over the top. His heart is full. It's not a positive statement. And there's a remark in the Gemara which I thought would be there's a remark in the Mishnah in Ketubot, which is worth looking at. Someone who eats at the house of his father-in-law in Judea. So we're talking about habits in Judea. And with this must be someone who's engaged but not yet married. So we're talking about someone who's betrothed, ha'arusa. Someone who eats at the house of his prospective father-in-law in Judea. Shelov edim, without witnesses. So he's there's no one else there. Eino yachol liton ta'anat p'tulim. He's unable to make a claim about virginity. He can't say later, this girl's not a virgin. Mipnei shemit yached ima, because he has secluded himself with her. I.e., somehow, if you live in Yehuda, there's sort of assumption that you might a couple that are engaged might have had a sexual relationship. That seems to be the assumption, is geographical. And that's what Rabbi Yehuda is saying, that generally those who are betrothed only don't need 3 months gap before they're married, with the exception if they live in Yehuda. And Rabbi Yossi says, Kol hanashim yitarsu, all women can be betrothed, chutz min ha'almana mipnei ha'ibul, with the exception of the widow, because she's going to be in a mourning period for, let's say, for a month. And we wouldn't engage a widow in her shloshim. And I said, according to Kahati, the halacha goes according to the first opinion, but the Rambam says clearly that ein halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The Rambam does not accept Rabbi Yehuda at all and his geographical distinctions. Like Rabbi Yossi, but rather like Rabbi Yossi. So the Rambam actually paskins like Rabbi Yossi. And then the Mishnah is now going to conclude with another brain teaser. 4 brothers were married to 4 women. Umeitu. Imratzah hagadol shebahem. Liyabemet kulam harshut biyado. So 4 brothers are married to 4 women, and there's a 5th brother. So all 4 brothers have died, and the 5th brother apparently could perform yibum with all 4 of them. And the Gemara objects, this is not a recommended practice. Even having 2 wives is not recommended, but having 4 seems to be over the top. And anyway, the Gemara is not completely comfortable with this idea, but strictly speaking, it's permitted in the Mishnah. Someone who's married to 2 women and died. So if someone was married to 2 women and died, yibum or chalitza with one of these, and this is a brother's yibum or chalitza, exempts her rival. And the Mishnah here refers to biata, sexual relationship, because and it's something we haven't discussed yet so far, but one of the principles that the Mishnah goes by is that the yibum is sealed actually when the marriage is consummated. The rabbis aren't very happy with this. That's why they institute the ma'amar, giving a betrothal in advance of yibum via money or via a document. But in principle, if you like, al pi Torah, the sexual relationship itself seals the yibum, and that's why either a sexual relationship or chalitza with one of them therefore exempts her rival, because the command is to build up the brother's house, and you only need to marry one of his wives in order to build up his house. If one of them was eligible to marry a priest, v'chap psula and one not. Im haya choletz leaf psula. If he was going to do chalitza, he should do chalitza to the one that can't marry a priest. He shouldn't turn someone who is already able to marry a priest into someone who's divorced. Ve'im haya miyabem lik. If he contracts yibum, it may be with her who he can, if he wants, contract with that who is eligible to marry the priest. I think on the grounds that if he subsequently divorces her, she's an ordinary. No, I don't quite understand why.